Finance Committee to order. Is there any public comment? Same rules as before. Okay. So first up on the agenda is the Lerda Delbar property. I'm sorry, Lerda Delbar property.
Thank you. Welcome to the new board members. And I understand that the Finance Committee and perhaps the full board has heard several, or at least one presentation on the LERDA proposals. And I'll give a little background. I think it would be helpful for the new board members. LERDA stands for Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Act. Okay, I got that right. And it's a tool used to incentivize the development of deteriorated or distressed properties that might not get off the ground if they didn't have some tax assistance in the form of an abatement of up to 10 years for the additional tax revenue that would be generated from the new construction. So from the day the construction is completed to the end of this period that, in this case, the school district would determine, you're collecting taxes on the base assessed value of the facility before the construction was done, and then after that, it can be full exemption for some period of time, not to exceed 10 years, or a regressive 100% exemption in year one and 90% in year two, and so on and so forth. So that's the basic concept of LERDA. And
that's one choice.
And so in this case, actually the way the LERDA works is the municipality where the facility is proposed to be developed is required to hold a hearing, and that hearing was held by Occupancy Barrow, and I believe representatives from the school district were in attendance. Information was provided there, and subsequent to that, we requested some responses in writing from the Delbar property, LERDA. There were two proposals, and there's an airport one also. The Delbar property team answered questions that we sent on May 22nd, and we received those responses at the end of June, and we've reviewed the responses. And from a legal perspective, because really essentially this is a fiscal decision of the school district. The threshold legal question that we look at is it a deteriorated property? I mean, you can't offer this program for any property that is looking for a helping hand. So the statute defines deteriorated property as statutes do. It jumps over to, hey, look at this statute where it talks about what's a blighted property or not. So there's factors, and it's a balancing to see if it meets the criteria. But there's one dispositive criterion, which is the property been condemned or declared uninhabitable or vacant by the municipality? And that was a key question that was responded to by the Delbar team. We have a letter from the borough that indicated that the property is in violation of a number of items and determined it to be uninhabitable. So the Delbar property meets the criteria as a deteriorated or distressed property. And then beyond that, it's really the school district to get comfortable with the idea of offering this exemption and in what form that exemption should take. That's maybe more than a brief overview, and I'll hand it off to whoever wants to ask any questions or the next step.
Did you want to come up and share a little bit?
Good evening. My name is Stephen Barth, and I'm a consultant for Occupancy Barrow as their Director of Economic Development. And I'm here on behalf of the borough to relate to you that we believe this is a vital project. It's been vacant for more than 10 years in the heart of our downtown. It does meet all the criteria for this LERDA assistance program. I do want to clarify that this LERDA, there was one that was recently in the paper. This is a progressive investment for all of municipalities. The Percy Borough Council voted unanimously to support this, and we submitted in ordinance form our submission and approved document to you. We would ask you for a unanimous vote as well. This will help revitalize our downtown. It is what's called infill development, so it's taking a 1914 brick factory building and returning it back to public use. We believe this is a very valuable project as we're revitalizing Percy's downtown, which was destroyed by fire. This will create positive revenue for you immediately or within the first year, and then ongoing, and then long-term. I mean, this is a great way for our borough and your school district to improve the community. So thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. So we had, as just to kind of piggyback on what Mr. Reed had said, we had sent out some clarifying questions to find out whether or not this would meet the criteria for LRTA, and we got some, from my perspective, I think very thorough answers to demonstrate that, I think it certainly meets the criteria that are set for it to qualify. I think what the board members are going to have to determine is whether or not that's something that they want to grant LRTA status for, and if so, what that would look like, because there can be all different terms regarding that. And I don't think that we're going to make decisions tonight, but we did receive a great deal of information, a packet that's attached here. Hopefully everyone that's here got to read through that, because the information in there gives you a lot of background information that's helpful, and I don't want to waste everybody's time going through all of it since it's all on there. But we'll see if any other board members have questions, comments, questions for them while they're here. And then, this will be something that we'll have to consider going forward, whether or not it's something we want to move forward on or not.
I have a question, and it relates to the submission, page 22, which was an Excel spreadsheet. I'd like an explanation of the specifics of that spreadsheet. It seems to be very limited in terms of the explanation as far as I can tell.
I did. Good evening, everyone. Michael Kraft. I'm attorney for the applicant, Deacon Cassidy. He's the principal of the entity that owns the building and is working through the process of getting our approvals and funding in place. Is with us this evening. What we took, Dr. Yarnell, was when I was here last time, and in your packet you saw a representative sample of my client's work on projects close to here that are being completed as we speak, and that are LRTA projects. So we took an apples-to-apples comparison of the base taxes of those projects, pre-construction to post-development numbers, so that we could give you a real-world example of what the tax picture was for the school district before and without adaptive reuse, and what it ends up being once we invest something in the neighborhood of $20 million. Not me. $20 million into the project. So we have two real-world examples that are either one's complete, one's being completed, that have gone through this exact process, and we used the current tax numbers and used that example to show you a prospective tax benefit. I think the total is $1.5 million at the end of the 10-year abatement period. So that's how we got those computations together, Dr. Yarnell. I hope that answers a little more of your question.
Only partly. What is the point in the 2.9 factor, for instance?
Steve, come on up.
Could you repeat that question, Peter? I couldn't hear you.
In this table, which was on the last page, page 22 of their submission, there is an Excel spreadsheet about the percocy loss LRTA. And there are numbers of lines on the spreadsheet. The second line of third line, first line is the date, second line is the current taxes, at least that's for 2019. Third line is a factor of 0.29. Now, I don't know where the 0.29 came from or why they put it there.
I think that might be the common level ratio for Bucks County, but we don't tax at full assessed value. There's a common level
Right.
ratio. In
Can you
fact,
turn your microphone on and start over, please?
is this the common level, is that 0.29 the common level ratio for Bucks County, if you know, Steve? He's asking where that 0.29 came from.
I believe so.
To get to the tax consequence of the value times the common level ratio equals the assessed value from which the tax is based.
Yes.
I think that's it, Dr.
Okay.
Then my next question is the $30,000, which is the current number that you're using for 2019, expands fairly exponentially. Why is that the case?
The base number,
Mm-hmm.
can you explain? How does it go from 30,000?
Goes to 38,000
First year.
and change the second year, and then 50 and so forth.
Why are those numbers increasing, Dr. Yarnell's asking you?
That's basically spread out after 10 years.
But why is year one 38,000 as opposed to your starting point 30,000? What did you use to come up with that increase in amount? Is that the investment in the first year, or what is that?
Let's say that would be probably the investment in the first year.
So once we're started construction, then the new tax is figured on what we've done in that first year, so we can get reassessed as we go along, I believe.
So your presumption is that this property will start, assuming that the proposal is approved, that it will start fairly quickly to
That's
establish
not-
that amount of
Takes time.
revenue.
As your solicitor correctly pointed out, the abatement period doesn't start until we start. So we don't have all the approvals in place, nor do we have the financing package in place. This is an incremental piece of that we're asking for. As I mentioned last time, we're working with DEP for the way forward with regard to them. Percy Borough needs a land development plan applied, approved. This is separate apart from tonight, but across the street there's a townhouse development that we're doing, which is the Bentline piece of property. That's being considered now, and we're working through the process with DEP of getting our land development approved for residential use. Bucks County redevelopment project got 100% 10-year exemption. And I think that was kind of confusing if you read about it in the paper, as if we were after that 10-year total exclusion. We never have asked for that. We've been perfectly on board with that graduated abatement that you just spoke of.
And it's the school district's prerogative to obviously approve alerta and even the form of it, because the borough adopted or enacted an ordinance that approved the approach that we're discussing and made its decision contingent on the other taxing authorities approving one also. The school district still has, it could determine that the LERTA that it would approve would be for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years.
100% discretion.
Time's out.
100%, it's like a way to keep people moving, huh? 100% discretion, you're exactly right.
But if I understand you correctly, you're asking this, this board for the same terms that Percy has already granted you.
It's a little more important than that. It is an integral and necessary part to keep this project moving forward. Our financing is based upon the tax treatment that we've requested.
Understand. I just want to be clear that you're asking for 10 years at 10% per year.
Increasing, yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's what you're asking this board for. Okay.
Other questions?
Another question, unless someone else does. The timing of the project and how, I assume part of your decision on when to start depends on knowing if you have these decisions in place, but if you could give us a sense of your time frame and how you look at this.
Absolutely. As I understand it, and we're putting together at least 3 or 4 different types of financing in this project because of some available tax credits also another way, as well as our traditional financing. We're looking to close on the financing for the project in early 2019. So we're thinking January, February, we're in a thumbs up or thumbs down position as to whether we move forward because we have successfully put these pieces together.
Would this project move forward in some shape or form if the district did not approve alerta or in some reduced fashion?
Yeah, it's our current belief it would not.
Can you tell me how long you expect this project to take from the time you start?
You know, I think Mr. Cassidy would be good with that because he's just finishing one, Jacksonville Road. Steve, how long does that start to finish?
It's about 18 months to 2 years.
Okay, so you expect that it would be done in 18 months to 2 years, and at that point, you would start to make back some of those profits from the property, right? And then
No.
the next 8 years?
You'd start to realize income, but to call it
Well,
profit
I'm sorry,
would
you're
be
right.
a word
So
that
you'd
would...
start to offset your cost.
Exactly
Start
so.
taking more
Exactly
income
so.
in. Right.
If you look at the round number of $20 million, we're at 80 units. Just for a moment, think of a $300,000 house and how long it would take. If you divide that 300 into 20 million and found out how much it cost you per unit, we're a long way from profit, not to
Right,
land
yeah,
on a
but-
word, but we
sorry.
will, yeah.
That's not what I meant. Yeah, I mean that you would start to offset the cost with income.
Assuming full rental, yes.
Right, okay.
Because I think expenses will still far exceed income, even the running expenses of operating an 80-unit building until it gets fully occupied.
So would you say that the first 2 years are more important for you to be having that kind of a discount than the last several years? I would feel like the beginning would be more important to you than the end as far as how you lay this out.
I think because of the way the financing is put together, they're all, I don't want to say of equal importance, but they're all integrally important to whether the financing works. Yeah, the first few years and have enough money to pay the bills, obviously. You buy a new home, you want to be able to pay the bills as they come in, of course. But I think the 10-year time frame is the logical window for the client to say, I can make this become something that's worthwhile in that time frame. And I don't think short of that happens when you run the pro formas on the numbers, if it happens then.
I have a quick question. So that start time, I'm guessing it's also contingent on all the other I guess, factors of people who have to come in and do DEP, this and that, correct?
Yeah, the process is really two major elements. We're working with DEP to come up with a finished product as to what's going to allow them to allow us to do that. We're moving right now with Penny and Art to accomplish that. On parallel track, we'll be filing our application for land development with Percy Borough in the next couple of months. That has to be approved by Planning Commission and then Borough Council. And then once we get that done, we'll have to execute land development agreements, post escrows for the construction of public improvements. 6 to 9 months to get through that process, typical.
And just so I'm clear, is it an all or nothing? So is it 10 years or nothing, or are you willing, like, is it something that you're willing to work with because of the other two?
I don't have any ability to say anything short of 10 years is going to allow us to move this forward. I wish I could, but there's just so much involved here money-wise. All the costs that you guys have been touching on, that's all cash out of pocket, period. And all the development costs, all the land development costs, engineering costs, multiple 6 figures just to keep the project moving up front with no help from anyone before financing.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So what happens if you don't get your permits approved and your subdivision is not approved? So you're delayed in your permitting process, okay? Not that you don't get it approved ever, but what if it's delayed? So what if you don't get it till 2020?
Specific to your piece of this, we don't start appreciating the benefit of that until we start construction, which would be preceded by the permits and the approvals.
Okay, so then conceivably, we wouldn't need to approve it immediately. Wouldn't this be contingent, are you saying that this is contingent upon that, or that is contingent upon this? So, or
If I understand your
are they
question correctly, our ability to put together the incremental pieces of how this will be paid for
Yeah.
is important and critical right now. Between now and the start of January, we need to know whether we have the support and the approvals from the necessary financing institutions to go forward to that seeking of building permits. Without it, it's just like building a house. No banks get behind the project. It doesn't work on paper. It's got to work on paper with real-world commitments. So this is, as you can hear, incredibly important to where we are. And if you've driven by that building, I thought the question you were going to ask me, and I'll be a politician and answer the one I wanted. It's it. I was a borough solicitor for 13 years. I raised my family in this community, sent them through your fine schools all those years. I drove by that place from my home to my office for 32 years in May. And none of you that do that want to see that for another generation. Those first generation factories are not for the weak of heart. The amount of money necessary to get to start makes it a stupid decision not to bulldoze it and start over, but this man wants to bring it back to its architectural first generation significance. And if you saw those pictures of those places that you can go walk in today and put those lines and spaces back into play in a way that our children can appreciate what we were like when we built this country, I think that's a task worth taking on, but not for the faint of heart.
And just to clarify, year one of the LRTA, and correct me if you think I'm misrepresenting this, begins following completion of construction. It's not.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it's not. So year two is the first year in which the school district would be reaping the benefits to the tune of 10% of the increased assessed value after it's done. So, even if it went into effect, there's not going to be an increase in value while they're still constructing the project.
They wouldn't reassess during that period.
Yeah, so the reassessment occurs following completion of construction. Year one, 100% tax exemption, then year two, 90%, at least that's what was approved by the borough. So it's several years before you would see the benefits of a newly assessed nice facility.
So I do have a follow-on question to that. Okay, so if LRTA status is granted, how long do they have where they can be in this zone of doing nothing, waiting for permits, et cetera, et cetera? Is there a time period? Is it?
That's a good question, and I think we would work to, from the very beginning, including in a resolution for the district to adopt, if it were to approve some version of this, its requirements for
Start.
For it to start, and work with your team to see what's reasonable.
Right.
You know.
I'm not looking to be unreasonable, I just want to know,
Yeah.
because we could hang out there for a lot of years with this status granted, right, before construction begins, given, the hoops that you're going to have to jump through.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the real world of this side of the dais, the amount of investment capital that he's pumping into this as we speak will move that aggressively
Okay.
forward, but it's a fair question, because we're still putting the pieces together.
So the numbers that you have here are an estimate, but when construction is completed, it will be reassessed. So it would be based on those accurate numbers. It wouldn't be based on the predicted numbers.
Exactly so.
And so if you don't finish it until 5 years from now, when the values have gone up, that would be reflected in that. Okay.
More money in your pockets. Absolutely, absolutely. These numbers were just based on the project that's getting finished right now, so that we could give you apples to apples, what has happened in a project of this type, in an attempt to answer those tough questions. So what's this mean financially for you?
So financially for the district, over here, sir. So financially for the district, from this point until that reassessment occurs after construction is finished, the district would maintain its same level of tax revenue that it receives currently. And then in year 2, it would receive basically 10% of the increased value.
Right. So your baseline remains the same whether we go or not.
Right. Now, my second question is, I think you touched on a little bit in your letter, what happens to this property if Mr. Cassidy doesn't go forward with this project?
Well, the question I answered without being asked was, it sits. He owns it, but without a combination of efforts, it sits, because the upfront investment is so daunting that it won't go forward unless the financing can come together in a way that allows it to go forward. And so it won't be done. And as a developer, solicitor type, both sides of the dais, it's a tough haul, bringing it back up to code. All those different things you got to do, mercy. It's just a big, big task. And, there's very few options, because our manufacturing sector's all but gone. We have some of it, but the reasons these buildings were built in the first place is gone. Even the second generation and third generation is gone. Steve Barth has successfully brought a fair number back, but not enough to occupy all those buildings.
So for the, I guess this might be a question for you, Mr. Reed. I noticed that the LERTA would transfer to a new owner if someone else took over the property. But could our resolution that you just spoke of, would that transfer as well? Could we hold the next owner to the same terms for the number of years or we'd have to renegotiate it?
That's a good question. I don't have a clear answer on that right now, but you're correct that the status can transfer if the property is conveyed, but is it automatically pursuant to the original ordinance? Perhaps. Would you have the ability to revisit the terms? I'd like to think so, and I think that's worth looking into.
So I think what you're saying is that this is not a project that you can take on unless you get LERTA status. So your expectation is that the taxes on that property for the next 10 years would stay at $30,000 per year, where if you got LERTA status, it would increase up to your estimate of about $300,000 per year.
Well,
Is that?
It goes up incrementally, but yes.
Right, so
In round
eventually-
numbers, yes.
And then the terms, the years and percentage terms, that would be determined by the school district if they decided to give you grant you LERTA status, would fill in the middle of that until you got to that point.
That's your discretion. What you're asking, it's 100% discretion on your part, of course.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone else have any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, I think the board will take this into consideration and board members will give this some thought, get some feedback from our attorney and, see how the board would like to move forward.
Thank you. And if we need to come back or answer any more questions, please let us know. We want to give you everything you need to make an eyes wide open decision. We understand it's a big one.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Steve Barth is suggesting that the building that's in your packet is open on Jacksonville. It's Jacksonville Green.
Are you going to give us a tour? Is that what
You
you're
can
saying?
have one.
Yeah, we're having an open house in a couple of weeks, so if we could invite you all down as our special guests, then I think you could see firsthand exactly what you're going to get by doing this. So we'll I contact through Sean, and we'll send you those invitations, okay?
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Actually, if you know, is it open to the public as well?
Yes,
or-
it's open now. You're welcome to go anytime.
Do you have, if you have the date and time and you'd like to share it with the public in case anyone else is interested?
I don't know that it's within the next couple of weeks, so I don't have it on top of my
If it's after July 23rd and you get the information to me beforehand, I can share it at the next board meeting if you'd like.
Great, that's appreciated.
Thank you.
Mr. Barth, before you go, is that between street and county line roads?
Yes.
Yes, it is. So it's off at Jacksonville Road. If you were going south on
Yep.
County Line Road, you would cross over York Road going south. The next road is Jacksonville Road. You would make a right, and it's about 2 blocks in. And I have a consulting firm, and I've worked with Mr. Cassidy on 2 other projects in Hebron. So the one, Jacksonville Green, is an 85-unit, very similar to the Del Bar property. And then right next to that is Hebron Lofts, another project he worked on, which won this Montgomery County Revitalization Award. And the Hebron Lofts went from $9,600 a year in total taxes to $360,000 in total taxes. And Jacksonville Green, we have LERTA for that project, and I think that's going from 20, well, it's in the packet. So, it's usually a factor of 10. But just in revitalizing the community, you have a greater value of improving the peripheral property values as well. So, throughout the district, you have a lot of properties like this. So this is a good strategy, I think, just overall. So thank you very much for letting us.
One more point.
Sure.
Who was the previous property owner? I'm just curious, because I couldn't place it. Is that the old air sales facility?
Sanitarians.
Pardon me?
Sanitarians?
Okay.
The building was there for close to 15 years,
Okay.
unoccupied.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry to keep you, but I think last time you were here, I had asked what the occupancy percentage was of the other projects, and you answered it, but I can't
It's
remember.
pretty much 100% full.
Speak in the microphone, Steve.
It's pretty much 100% full. Somebody moves out, somebody
Can you
moves
speak up, please?
out. It's really,
Steve, here up, she couldn't hear. Speak up, she couldn't hear.
I just want to say that I did do a drive-by around that area because I have family in that area, and I remember when it was vacant forever. As kids, we used to ride our bikes around. Probably shouldn't have, but we did. And but you did do a really great job of that. So I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and it is a lot to take on, and it is a balancing act. So it's not a light decision that I know that we're considering here. So
Thank you.
Understand that.
and part of what we do, instead of tearing up 100 acres of ground and building townhouses, we take these old buildings, resurrect them, and turn them into what I consider is the new millennials. They love these places to live because they don't want to buy a house, and it really changes the whole community.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
So thank you.
Can they stay for the public to ask questions?
That's up to them. If you would like to stay until the end, if there's questions from the public, that's up to you if you'd like to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so we have contracts for approval, A through H. Mr. Delbert?
Thank you. We have 8 contracts this month for approval by the board. The first couple are student-related contracts. EIUS is educational services for a student that's in a medical facility. That is a normal company that we deal with usually on a month-to-month basis for those students. The second one, the Fairwall Academy, is an extended school year for this summer for a student, cost of $175 a day. Then C is Bayada Nursing as a renewal from last year. This is for substitute nurses for in the buildings and on field trips and wherever we need a nurse to go with kids. This is one of the services that we get those folks from. And that's $60 an hour. The D is Langman Psychological Associates. This is a presentation for the beginning of the school year to the faculty. The presentation is preventing school shootings. And the cost of that is $5,000. E is Efficiency LLC. This is the software program to run the RAMS period program, which is beginning next year. And that is a cost of $2,500 a year and a 1-year cost of $500 for the implementation for next year. F and G are the musical theater programs for South and Central Middle School for next year for their musicals. And H is for Central Middle School's class to go to the American Revolution Museum next spring at the cost listed at $23.26, and that cost is paid by the students. But the children also took that field trip last year, so that's a repeat. So that's contracts this month.
I just have one question under the Efficiency LLC. Is that not something that couldn't we put those classes in Canvas? I know you said that we couldn't do it in Power School, but what about Canvas? Couldn't we, because right now we have those the kids are put in their classes and they can communicate through Canvas. Why can't we use that program for that?
I can't answer. I don't know if Dr. Price might be able to help with that. I don't know what his involvement in this has been. But I wasn't involved with that level. Do you know that?
And I guess my question, I'll just follow one, is I thought we already had a scheduling system.
Okay, so this specific system is to schedule the RAMS period, the remediation enrichment period that the high school has been working on. Power School does not have the ability to do what they're asking. This is a little different. This system, what makes it different is we're looking for something that a teacher during this period can say, I want this student. And when we say schedule them, schedule that student during that period to come to them. So for instance, this period's going to run, if you think back to the presentation that the group gave at an activities committee meeting, or a curriculum committee meeting, the goal of this is I'm going to run this period once every activity cycle, let's say. So once maybe every 6 days of the school cycle. And during this period, we want it to be organized. So teachers will be able to say, these are the students that I need to work with this period. And then if they're not signed out by a teacher, a student can go in and they can say, I need to go see this teacher for help, for instance. So it's kind of a two-way program. That type of scheduling is not something that Power School offers. There's no add-on module to make that work. They looked at lots of software programs, the RAMS committee, And the cheapest one besides this, I will say, was in excess of $10,000, and none of them met the needs of what the committee was looking for it to do. So this was this was a much smaller company, and the system and the presentation they received, it was exactly what the group was looking to do. So that's what this is specifically to work with that RAMS period. The reason it's real important is we've talked to other schools that have a period like this, and they warned us to not make the mistake of going down the road of starting this period and not having it organized, and having this more like a study hall, people going all over the place, not knowing where they're at. So they've tried all kinds of systems, and one of them created an in-house system. They happen to have a programmer on staff. Another one purchased a very expensive software program. This was the one that the committee's been looking at that actually meets the needs. And it's the last thing really to get us rolling to implement this for this coming school year.
So the person who programmed one, would they like to lend that to, let us use that one?
It's a great question. We asked that question, and actually they're looking now to move forward. It met very temporary needs, but it was lots of restrictions, and it kind of got them started, but it's not meeting their needs anymore, so they're also going to be looking for another option. So if this works for us, I think they're interested in hearing from us, actually.
So this isn't something where day one you'll go here, day two you'll go here. You're talking about there needing to be that flexibility where you may find out first period that at the end of the day, or at the RAMS block, you're going somewhere else, so it's got to be flexible. Is that what you're saying? It's not a set schedule of where you're going to be on different days, and that's the issue? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely correct. So, and we'll do it a little bit further in advance than that. So a student this week of the 6-day cycle, the math teacher may need to work with them. The next week, maybe it's the social studies teacher. The next week, maybe no one needs to pull that student for help or for enrichment. And maybe the student says, I need to make a test with this teacher, so I'm going to sign up for this teacher because no one has signed me up that day. So teachers get first priority, and then students are able to sign up after that. And this is also the period where we're talking about enrichment and those kind of opportunities as well as remediation. So it's extension activities as well as remediation. So there's so much going to be going on during this period that it has to be organized. And this is the only thing that we can think of, and that other schools that work with this really have thought of to utilize to make that an organized block of time. Because you're only going to be doing it once every 6 days.
So who keeps track of making sure everyone is signed up to be somewhere, or do they have a designated spot that they go to if they're not going to be going elsewhere? Like, do they have an assigned homeroom, or like who keeps track of all of that? How does that work?
So that has been discussed a lot, but some of that was dependent on if they're able to get the software. Because the idea is that there is going to be a point person, probably one of the assistant principals, that will be responsible to make sure, hey, the students are all scheduled during this period. And then if they're not grabbed, and if they don't sign up, then they would likely be in a homeroom. So this period, how I'm envisioning this right now, is students would be starting with homeroom, and then if they don't go anywhere, they're remaining in homeroom. As this gets moving, and if that's not working, then we might have to go to a different plan. But we see that everyone would have an opportunity to sign up for something, and students would be encouraged to do that. And there's going to be more, as the committee sees, there's just more and more offerings over a period of time that will start with X number, and so we're not overwhelming the organization piece or the options that are available. But we kind of see this growing, there being a mentoring component to this as well. And so if someone's not going somewhere specifically for a need that day, there's also a mentoring component that can happen here, and everyone can be involved in something like that. So the goal here is to have 100% participation. It just may not be perfect from day one as far as there's going to be bugs to work out with the system since we've never done it before, but we think we can hit the ground running pretty efficient. But it's going to take, I think, a couple cycles through to make sure everyone understands this, because it's going to be new for the students and the staff.
And so the teachers will be able to access then who all is supposed to be in their classes, and that way they can make sure and they'll be doing attendance to make sure that everyone that's supposed to be there gets there. And if there was like a fire drill or an intruder drill or something like that, you'd be able to log into the system and see who all's supposed to be where to track anyone down if there's a situation like that.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. This system, besides also signing students out, students signing up also is the system that would track the attendance for did they show up, did they not show up. They would all be in that same system.
Okay, so they can mark them actually absent in that same system.
Correct.
Okay. Don't we have some kind of system for these? I remember there being something, and maybe I'm not thinking, maybe it's a little different than I remember, but we had something where the kids could sign up and do different activities and things. Didn't we have a system for that? And they could track their hours, because they would earn hours for like community service type stuff. I remember us getting some kind of program where they could track where they were going, but I don't know if that's.
Never a software system that I'm aware of. I mean, they might have done something paper. I don't remember a software system that's tracking
I
that.
thought we did have some kind, because it was like a per user thing.
Yeah, I'm
You don't
not
know?
recalling that now, sorry.
I just have a question. I just wanted to know, I'm just curious, was the prevention for school shootings, I know it's done with the psychological associates. I'm guessing, is this like do they do this like every year?
Great question. No, it would definitely be the first time. Dr. Peter Lankman is a renowned psychologist who is also an advisor to Homeland Security in some of the higher levels of government. He presents at Safe Schools symposiums and things like that, and some of us had the privilege of seeing him, a few of us, some of the high school administrators, myself, and some of our security officers saw him this past spring, and he was outstanding, he was captivating, and really his two big focuses, and we're going to have our entire staff here for this, as well as we've invited the local police departments as well for a piece of this. His topics are really profiling school shooters and taking you through many scenarios. And as well as then a big focus of this is going to be for teachers and staff, what to look for as far as within assignments and things like that. What are red flags that you could be looking for? So really there's not a lot published on this that is to the level of what Dr. Langman has done. This is all he does right now. And he's an advisor to, is becoming an advisor to schools more and more so. His website is dedicated to this. Every school shooting that ever happened is profiled on his website. He's written several books. So he is the leading authority. So we've never done it before. I definitely don't think this is an every year thing, but it certainly ties in hand with lots of our safety initiatives that we've undertaken recently.
Is there a parent component, like a community? I mean, I know you said the police, but is there like a parent, like open to the parents component to that, if they want to?
Not to this specific one. It is really geared towards the law enforcement and the staff. But I know he certainly is open to customizing presentations for audiences. So if you ever want him to do something in the evening for parents as the focus, we could certainly discuss that with him.
Dr. Price, are there on his, I didn't look at the website yet, but in case there aren't, I'll ask you now, are there reviews from other schools? I know that you went to his program, but I would like to see reviews from other schools and the types of materials, the things that what they're going to be sharing with our teachers as far as what to look for. I would like to see that if that's possible.
There are reviews on there, references and things like that, yes. I also having the luxury of being there that day was able to speak to others that had worked with him and had gotten tremendous feedback. I picked up one of his books and also read that. I think one of the really neat things here is that he's done presentations for so many different audiences that he can gear it, and the content we can work together on. So him and I have discussed specifically what this would look like if approved, which is why the first half we would have law enforcement there with the teachers, and the second half they would probably exit and be focused more on just the teachers. So since this is a 4-hour program, I think we need to make sure we're giving them material that everyone finds usable. And so we certainly can send out this presentation in advance, yes, if that's one of the things you're asking.
Student activity counts?
Okay, The school board members approve renewals or requests for new student activity accounts each summer. So we're in the process of that. As you can recall, last month we had a number of student activity accounts on the agenda for renewals and so forth. Throughout the summer, then we'll have a few stragglers come through. But the student activity accounts are not allowed to start to function in the fall until the school board has approved them. So it is an integral process of getting ready for the next school year. So this month we have two student activity accounts. We have the Diagler Student Council account. This is a renewal. This account has been in place over the years, and they use it to start to teach the kids governance and so forth at the elementary level. The student, not every elementary school has student activity accounts. It's really up to the building level. Then when you get to the middle school, you have some more, and then of course at the high school, there's just a lot of student activity accounts. So the older the kids get, the more things they get involved in, and so we have more student activity accounts. So that account, like I said, is a renewal at Diagler. And then the second one we have is actually a new account for the high school. They're requesting to start a student activity account for the Spanish club next year. So with the board's blessing, we'll let the kids start that account up next year. And we do have a student activity account guide that outlines all the procedures and so forth, and there's forms with that guide and so forth. And and we have one secretary at the high school that spends a great deal of time with this function with the student activity account. And then all the student activity accounts are reviewed by our director of finance every year, and then they're also part of our annual audit. So they are reviewed, and we do make sure that bank recs bank statements, bank recs are done, and really all the checks are cut from the business office. So there are not individual accounts out there at all the schools. Those requests for payment have to come through the business office. They're approved. There's an approval process. So it is very heavily guarded with internal controls and so forth. Our director of finance is very strong in internal controls, and she does a tremendous job with that. So I just wanted to give the new members a little bit of heads up on what's coming their way. So it's student activity. That's all I have.
Any questions or comments? Okay, everybody's comfortable moving those forward then also? Okay, and the next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for August 14th. We're back to public comment.
I'll say my name this time. I apologize. Sue Furlong, West Rock Hill Township. A few years ago, the previous business director, Ms. Johnson, put together a training manual for advisors who were going to be handling student accounts, and held some training sessions for those people. Is that still going on? And are those manuals still available to the advisors?
Yes.
Can you put your microphone on, please?
Yes.
There are training sessions?
There are manuals, and we do training sessions. Our director of finance does them.
Okay. Thank you. This LERTA thing, I'm kind of the mind, I'm watching what's going on at a national level, where we want to help you, but you got to be fair with us. And I think that is a good outlook for Pennridge School Board as well. What you've been handed is an agreement that is in the extreme for the first 11 years after they finish and complete their project, which is fine. Can't charge somebody for something they haven't completed yet. But you're getting hit with the double whammy. First of all, with the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. You begin with 0. You're basically giving away 50% of the taxes to which you would otherwise be entitled to. Okay? And that's what you're greasing the skids with. But in addition to that, because it is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, it would be like if I came to you and I said, I want to be in business with you. We're going to do something that's mutually beneficial. And we're both going to make $100,000. Now, I get my $100,000 this year, and you get your $100,000 basically 10 years from now, because that's when the school district will collect their half of the taxes that have been split between us and them with the 10, 20, 30. They get 90, 80, 70, okay? Flip the coin. You and I both know that if I give you $100,000 today, you get to run out and invest it. So you are now earning income on your half of our equal deal. I'm not, because I don't have anything. I'm earning on 10%, you're earning on 90%. And when I don't get my $100,000 until 10 years from now, if inflation is 2%, my $100,000 is not worth what your $100,000 was. Yours was in today's dollars. I will keep the 100 myself, okay? So my 100 is in today's dollars. Yours is going to be worth 90 cents on the dollar, maybe, okay? So you're getting the worst end of every possibility in this deal. I'm not saying don't do a LRTA deal. I think you need to if you want this business. And I think it's worthwhile to get the property improved. But treat me fairly. We're in this together. Why not a 50-50-50-50 for the next 10 years? And then you get the same valuable, let's say he gets $50,000 today, you get $50,000 today. He gets $50,000 next year, you get $50,000 next year. So if there's any hit with inflation, you both suffer or enjoy that equally. It's not all on the school board. And you can construct this agreement any way you want. You can make it 5 years. You know how if you go to get a 15-year mortgage, you pay a lower interest rate than a 30-year? It's because they don't know what inflation is going to do. And the longer you put that repayment into the future, the riskier that loan is. Same thing with this. You are loaning him the ability to do this, but it shouldn't be all on the board's back. Make it an equitable agreement. You can shorten the timeline. I would even shorten the timeline and give him a steeper cut than to take that out 10 years. If you give away the store, I'm going to tell everybody, okay? If you do it equitably, I will agree to it. And that's just how, I'm going to be real honest with you. Some of you are up for re-election real soon about the time this thing's going to ferment. And I'm not against LRTA, but I am against one that's not fair to both parties. And this is not a fair deal. The other thing I want to point out real quick, thank you for letting me go over 3 minutes, but it's a complicated issue, is that when I look at what they did in Bethlehem, they assigned a part of town that had been blighted. And so there were numerous buildings, numerous projects, numerous people, developers coming in. And every developer has a shot at bidding up those properties. What they're doing here appears to be a cherry pick deal, where had all the developers known that this property would qualify for LRTA, you may have gotten a better deal, a higher bid on that property so that your base comes up immediately, had more developers known about it. But these guys, they come in, they buy it at dirt rock bottom price, and then they go for the LRTA. So the